again, and again, and again. Blood and darkness. Well, that's one way to get my attention, I suppose, isn't it, mate? No good shade. I mean, you no harm. I just mean, if you wanted to grab my attention, that's the way to do it. Well, by standing there, or hovering, I should say, right in front of me, yes. I rise from the sticks again and again and again. I swear, sometimes the underworld feels more like a laundry room. Rinse and repeat, so on, so forth, again and again and again. That's why I bought those towels. Trying the same thing again and again, expecting different results. No, mate, no. I don't mean it's a literal laundry room. No. And that thing about trying again and expecting different results, that's nothing to do with the laundry, I suppose, unless you keep mixing fabrics or what have you. But that's not really what I meant. Still, don't think I forgot you. Oh no, mate, I did not. I never forget a friendly shade. But apparently, a friendly shade has forgotten me. Have you been drinking from the Lithi again? Not that you could, not here. Well, I'm your prince, Zagreus. Don't call me Zag, please, mate. One of my relatives calls me that, and, well, I've never really liked it. In fact, I think that he might be one of the more annoying ones. Blasted fool. But don't tell him I said that. He's a good drinking buddy. But yes, I am your prince, Prince Zagreus. See behind you, just over there. The rather large, dour-looking fellow behind a desk. That's my father, Hades. Oh, you remember him? Of course you do, mate. Why wouldn't you? No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be so cruel. I'm just a bit tired, that's all, from adventuring, I suppose you'd call it. And far be it from me to criticise a shade who has a little problem with memory. It must be mind-numbingly boring for you here. Well, last we spoke, good shade, I offered to help you with a problem that you were having. Do you remember? Well, no, I know that you don't remember the event itself, but do you remember the problem that you were having? It's alright if you don't. Shades. Mine's like Zeus, right? Well, before I headed out to test my father's security, shall we say, you tasked me with something. The task was simple enough. Help you to sleep. That's right. You've been suffering from bouts of insomnia, I think they call it. Anyway, you're having difficulty reaching slumber in your eternal slumber, and I offered to help. I suggested that you speak to Hypnos over there, but, well, it looks like he's already asleep, so I don't think it'd be much help. Sorry. However, I did manage to procure something rather illicitly from the administrative wing of the building of my home that, well, it might help you. Would you look at that? It appears this parchment has been printed upside down. A little shady humour there. Alright, well, you didn't have to laugh, but you could have. It would have been generous. Anyway, do you know what this is? Well, my good shade, mate, I have the pleasure to inform you that this is a contract that was signed by my father, Lord Hades himself. The contract is to do with you, mate. Can you believe it? How important you are. More important than me. I mean, I've got a pact of punishment, but that's a little bit different, I think. Now, this one is exclusively concerning you, and the punishment that you face. I don't know what you did while you were up there, but for whatever reason, my father, he decided that your punishment would be to never rest, to never feel the warm embrace of Hypnos over there, to always be walking your waking hours, to never rest your head, which, to be honest, sounds a little harsh. Just what I think, but that's why you've been wandering these halls. No respite, to no avail. Your punishment sealed. Not with a kiss, I'm afraid, but with a rather intricate signature, it turns out, mate. Anyway, do you know, good shade, how one nullifies a parchment like this in the underworld? How you can end a contract such as this. Allow me to show you, good shade. And thus, mate, you are free. Please thank me later. In fact, thank me after you've had a good night's sleep. Anyway, speaking of sleep, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Although, I did just die. I should probably admire myself in the mirror for a while. You're still sleeping. What time is it? Time somebody got a sundial. I'm joking. Well, not that. I have access to what time of day or night or whatever it is down here is right now. I'd say with some certainty, a decent amount of confidence, and with, well, experience, that it's probably around about 7:48, mate. You're tired. Still. I suppose that my Sisyphean task can wait a little bit longer, if you like, mate. Besides, you were so very good to me. I'd like to help you more, if I can. And with Hypnos out for the count, and maybe Fan a little inappropriate for the task at hand, I would be delighted to help you reach some kind of level of slumber. Yes, not the eternal kind. Unless I happen to bump into you in Tartarus, but here's hoping that doesn't happen, right, mate? Well, there's lots of ways that I could help. I could regale you with the tale of the time that I faced Lerny, the bone hydra, and I balanced on a single pebble as it bobbed about in lava, like a tiny island, on one toe. And yet, I still vanquished my foe. What do you think about that then, mate? Oh? No. I could recall the time that I faced 1,000 butterflies in Elysium, and I slew them all with a single blow kiss. Yes, I suppose you're right. Those are quite self-contained stories, aren't they? Not really much breadth to them. Probably not good nighttime fodder. All right then, mate. Let me think. What kind of stories do you like? My story. Well, you know, sometimes, mate, I think that perhaps my story, and all of those involved in it, or even in the periphery, such as yourself, I sometimes worry that my story may just be the saddest of them all. That is, until I reach my goal. You know, it's funny. Tartarus, Asphodel, Elysium. Everywhere I go, on my journey, my quest, my calling, I meet people, shades, usually good like yourself. Some not so good, of course. And they all share their stories with me. After some time, naturally. People don't just open up down here, which is understandable. I'm sure you understand, mate. But when they do, when I learn more about them, about who they are and who they were, I realize that everyone's story is, well, sort of the same, but different. I don't know if that means anything at all. And don't worry, mate, I'm not asking you to work it out for me or anything like that, but if you're not interested in any of my stories of high adventures, then perhaps stories from other shades will help you to drift off to sleep. and at the very least, their stories will be shared in the great oral tradition. What do you say? One from each realm. Challenge accepted, mate. But are you ready? I'm not sure that I can recall these stories so well all the time, and furthermore, well, I'm not sure if I tell them any good. Best to hear it from the horse's mouth, I suppose. Or the bull's, depending on which story you're talking about. But I suppose, if it's alright with you, mate, we'll start from the beginning. The first place that I always end up, and the last place that I really want to be. And the thing is, it's just over there, if you want to see it. Tartarus. Not the best place in the underworld, I have to admit. Better company has been had with Carol, the ferryman. Have you met him? I suppose you would have. Of course, once. Probably not twice. I don't think that mortals are allowed to return to the underworld more than once. Or is it twice? My father, I swear he makes up these rules as he goes along. Don't tell him I said that, though. He's angry enough as it is. So, on one of my many escapades through Tartarus, I saw Thanatos, talking to someone, big fellow. And this fellow was stood next to, well, an even bigger boulder, who we will call Baldy. How about that? I didn't make that up. He did. Anyway, this fellow was called Sisyphus. No, I didn't sneeze. Sisyphus. And no, it's not a venereal disease. Just an unfortunate name for a very, very unfortunate person. Do you know his story? Good. Then I shall tell you, mate. And I hope that you enjoy it, and perhaps even learn something, I suppose. Sisyphus. I remember the first time listening to Thanatos, talk to him. He sounded so downtrodden and upset. Well, why wouldn't you be, I suppose? You see, the thing was, poor Sisyphus, he had been given, well, not a Heraclean task, but possibly the worst task I can imagine, actually. Sure, same for you as well, mate. The toil of the repetitive task. I had a job like it once, believe it or not. I remember it well, my first job, and I'd never want to do it again. In fact, I had to return to that wretched place in order to get the parchment for you, to free you from your curse of sleeplessness. Or sleepness? Which one is it? Doesn't matter. Anyway, Sisyphus, his punishment. Wait, it doesn't really make sense to start with the punishment. Surely you would want to know the crime first, right, mate? Alright, crime first, then punishment. We'll do that for the other ones too, though there aren't really punishments for the other ones. In a way there are. You'll see. Sisyphus was a king. You wouldn't know it to look at him now. I mean, he looks more like a labourer, but that makes sense. His labour that is in vain is repeated every day. Anyway, he was a king. Yada yada. Typical king. Bit cocky. Bit arrogant. Bit greedy. Now, you'll find that this is a common thread and one of the problems with the oral tradition. Tales vary depending on who's telling it. Usually, it's got something to do with my uncle, Zeus, the king of Olympus. Mate, no wonder you're here. Anyway, the version I heard was from Than himself, Thanatos, death. And I prefer that version. Sisyphus tricked Zeus, and tricked Hades, my father, and tricked Thanatos, apparently. In the Than version, well, Sisyphus tricked Thanatos and locked him up on the boulder. And what this meant was that, unfortunately, for some time, people just stopped dying. Now, that sounds wonderful on paper, right? And also, perhaps father could have had a holiday, but no, that's not quite how it worked out, mate. It turns out that people not dying is not good. And furthermore, well, it made everyone involved a little angry. And so, Sissy, as I like to call him, well, after Thanatos was released, shall we say, Sissy was in big trouble. Like really big trouble, mate. I'm not kidding. The worst trouble ever. And as such, he was given the worst punishment imaginable. To push a boulder 3 times his size up a hill all the time. And then, once he reached the top, the boulder, well, it would just roll back down. And that was what Sisyphus has been doing since, every day, forever. I suppose that you could say that he deserved it, depending on who you talk to. And you could also say that it's not actually that bad a punishment, but could you really see yourself doing that? Mate, to be honest, could you see yourself pushing something up and it just rolling back down, doing the same thing every day, forever? Kind of makes you think, really, doesn't it, mate? About what we do. But anyway, it turns out Sisyphus has got a wonderful disposition, and I've actually found him to be quite optimistic. He's always happy to see me, and I'm always happy to see him. Another good shade, much like yourself. Still, I do feel for him. Maybe I'll have to find his parchment one day and release him from this unfair contract. There, you're feeling a bit sleepier. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that I'm so boring that I encourage you, an insomniac, to sleep. Wonderful, very flattering, thank you. Yes. The majestic meadows of magma, asphodel. I have to admit, probably my least favourite place. It's not that it's inhospitable, it's just inhumane. But nestled amongst the small islands that litter the fields of lava, the flames of grass, and the rain of magma, there is a nymph. A little home away from home, I like to think of it really. Eurydice is her name. Well, I try not to think of people in that way, but I suppose that she could be considered attractive. But she's not for me. Anyway, there she is, stuck in Asphodel. Always pleased to see me, always says hello, always singing her somber but beautiful song about her love. Someone you may recognize, Orpheus, the court musician here in Father's home. That's right, mate. You've probably seen them a few times. They don't do a lot of singing, but they do a lot of moping. As far as I understand it, that is what artists do. And certainly, if I was proficient in the lyre, which I'm trying to become, I'd spend an awful lot of time practicing by just simply moping. Still, do you know the story of them? How they came to be? Well, it's another jolly one, as stories revolving around my family tend to be. Orpheus was blessed by Apollo. You met him? Anyway, he was gifted musically. In fact, he was favoured by my family, the gods, for this ability. The ability to make them feel, perhaps even make them feel mortal for a minute. Anyway, Orpheus fell in love, and so did Eurydice, with one another, and so they were wed. Eurydice was Orpheus's muse, inspired all of their music all the time. In fact, a little birdie, Eurydice, told me that actually Eurydice wrote quite a number of the songs, but anyway, that's an intellectual property issue. Not my department, I don't think. I hope not. Anyway, mate, where was I? They were married. They lived their life, happy, etc., as I assume people do. But one day, when Eurydice was out walking, going to meet some nymphs or something, I don't know. Now again, I'm fairly sure that my uncle Zeus had something to do with this, but I don't want to, just assume that he did. Anyway, Eurydice was out, and unfortunately, she got bitten by a snake, or a viper, I don't know, and she died. And she came down here, as people tend to do. Like yourself, good shade. She came down here, and Orpheus, didn't take the news very well. In fact, they were so upset that everyone felt it. It was palpable. This feeling of grief, anguish, loss. Music turned to absolute trash. Anyway, so Orpheus decides that, no, this isn't right. I can't let this happen. And comes down here, living, mind, to speak to my father, who, as you've seen and probably experienced, can be a bit of a curmudgeon, I suppose. Anyway, Orpheus played with my father, and apparently, though I didn't see it so I don't believe it, it almost brought old man Hades to tears. And so, in a rare, very rare mind-mate exchange, my father, Lord Hades, made a deal with Orpheus. If Orpheus could walk all the way back that he came, out of the underworld, through all of these places that I've been through a few times, without looking back, then Eurydice, who would have been following him, will live again. Never had an offer like this been made. And Orpheus thought, well, they're a person of faith, they're a person of patience, and they're a person of love. They can do it. And from what I understand, it was all going swimmingly. They were making their way out of the underworld and were homeward bound. But what do you think happened, mate? Yes, at the last hurdle, coming out of the Styx, where creatures bleed red, and you can feel the warmth of the sun, although you can't right now. They got there, and Orpheus lost heart. Didn't feel Eurydice behind him. No, Eurydice was a shade, of course, so, as you well know, it's difficult to always ascertain whether or not a shade is actually there or not. Hence the little surprise I gave when you had just stood right in front of me. But anyway, Orpheus, doubting, turned around and looked, and for a moment saw his love Eurydice for the very last time. And Eurydice's been an asphodel ever since, and Orpheus, as you can see, is court musician here for my father. Yeah, well, it's quite sad. I'm hoping they'll reconcile one day, but nothing's certain, I suppose. But faith should be. If Orpheus had just believed a little bit more, perhaps they'd still be together now, living on the surface, doing whatever it is you people do. I didn't mean that in a derogatory way. I just meant I have no idea what you do up there. My relatives tell me, but I don't think they really know either, to be honest. You're still not sleepy. All right. All right. One more story. One more. And then I really have to go. No, I appreciate everything you've done for me, mate, but work needs a doing, you know. I'm known for being very diligent and hardworking, as you're probably aware. But, all right, one story, one more, from Elysium, I suppose. Well, there's a very sad one that I'm still not sure will ever be concluded, but that's not a story to sleep to. So, how about an adventure? An adventure with a king. A king who, I don't know if you've met him, is, well, a bit of a jerk. But kings tend to be, I suppose, don't they? Good change. This is the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. That's right, the very same mate, King Theseus of Athens. Apparently great guy in life, but I have to say, since I've met him in Elysium, comes across as a bit cocky. Is that what all great kings are like, mate? Right. Anyway, you probably know this one. But it took place on the great island of Crete, in the city of Knossos, I think. King Minos, his son had met an unfortunate end in Athens during some games. Anyway, he was understandably upset and somewhat blamed Athens for it. There's a lot of that, especially in my family, people blaming one another and then not really taking responsibility for their own actions. But anyway, so King Minos decided that there would be 7 or so sacrifices. I can't remember how often, maybe every month, something like that. Men and women, a bit unfortunate really. And he would sacrifice these people by throwing them into a maze, a labyrinth, that was under a temple or something, I think. Anyway, turns out that there was a creature living in the maze, in the labyrinth, called the Minotaur. Original name, right? King Minos, King Minotaur. I found that naming conventions in our group tend to be quite on the nose. But anyway, this monster was half man, half bull, and happened to be, well, King Minos' son, technically, though I think, from what I've heard, mate, that, again, my uncle Zeus may have been involved, really does have his filthy finger in a lot of pies. But anyway, this creature, the Minotaur, half bull, half man, lived in the labyrinth, and until a champion of Athens could defeat the Minotaur, there would be sacrifices. So this went on for some time, I think. And then one day Theseus, who is supposedly cunning, wise and strong, although I found him brash, bold, and, well, a bit of a wanker, he says, okay, I'll go, I'll kill the bullman, whatever. So he goes to Crete on a boat, I assume, and gets there. And I think he falls in love with the princess or something. Anyway, he knows that if he goes into the labyrinth, he'll probably be able to kill the Minotaur. But if he does, he still won't be able to get out because the labyrinth is a maze. A cyclopean, unknown mess of passageways. But the princess, who, well, he's enamored with, she suggests, quite logically, take a piece of string, and that way you'll be able to find your way out. Anyway, Theseus goes into the labyrinth, and of course he slays the Minotaur, the poor beast. And that's it. He kills the king's son for killing the king's son, and then becomes a king. Although I assume that's got more to do with that war. Which one? Name it. There are so many, sometimes I think that's all you lot do. But not you personally, mate, of course. A good shade like yourself. But anyway, that's the abridged story of Theseus and the Minotaur. I met the Minotaur as well, and he seemed nice enough. It was that Theseus that was actually bullheaded. Anyway, I'm afraid, good shade, that those are all the tales that you're going to get out of me today, unless you want to hear about the time that I didn't think so. So, I shall bid you good day, or good night, or whatever. It's still 7:48, I'm pretty sure. And you're still sleepy. Well, Hypnos still isn't up. Alright. I've I've got one last thing that might help. All right, mate, but after this, we're through. I was going to save this for a relative, or maybe do so, but here, I suppose you can have it. It's nectar, mate. Ambrosia. Nectar of the gods. Opium of the masses. It will undoubtedly help you to sleep. If you've never tried it, you'll never want to try anything else again after this. Here, please. I insist. It will help you sleep. I promise. Perhaps my tales were too good. Perhaps I'm too good a storyteller. Still, I hope that I've helped a bit. And I hope that at least getting rid of that blasted parchment will help too. But good shade. Well, I should remind you that my father tends to make work for idle shades, so rest while you can. And hang in there, good shade. That's probably not as inspiring as I think. I'll give Hypnos a prod on my way past. See if he can't help as well, but enjoy the nectar, and who knows, maybe we'll meet again. And maybe I'll tell you another story. Maybe one about me. Although I still worry that perhaps mine will be the saddest of them all. But I hope that yours isn't. Doing the same thing over and over again isn't so bad. If you do it differently every single time, it's not the same, right? Good night. Good shade.